never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah. Wait, I think I'll last a bit longer. Fine.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. So it is the last day of 2023, and here on the last day of 2023, I want to talk some college football, and I want to ask, why do college football fans want more college football, and then when the season gets here, they complain and want less football? We'll talk about that coming up in a couple of minutes, but first, let's talk about the bowl games from this past week. And I mentioned, I think it was Thursday or Friday here on the channel, that I've actually, for the most part, thoroughly enjoyed the bowl games this year. Now, of course, like always, there have been a few that have been complete duds, but for the most part, the bowl games this year have been very, very, very good, and the ratings are about where they are every year. If folks try to tell you the ratings are down, they're not, but they're not up either. They're about the same as they always are. But we had the Quick Lane Bowl, where Minnesota defeated Bowling Green 30-24. The First Responder Bowl, Texas State beat Rice 45-21. It was the best season in the history of Texas State. Texas State's quarterback this year is actually a guy who's played at LSU and Auburn, and now he's the quarterback for Texas State, and that would be TJ Finley. I think he found a home there. He's a good quarterback, but I don't think he's cut out for a huge, big-time Power 5 program. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl saw Kansas defeat UNLV 49-36. The Military Bowl, Virginia Tech beat Tulane 41-20. Now, Virginia Tech, of course, they're under second-year head coach Brent Pry, and they were absolutely terrible last year, and they were supposed to be terrible this year, and they ended up finishing 6-6 in the regular season. So you're talking about a team that's excited about being in a bowl game. It was the Hokies, because they were atrocious in 2022, and it actually looks like Brent Pry is going to prove all the doubters wrong and be a good coach. After all, Duke's Mayonnaise Bowl, West Virginia defeated North Carolina 30-10, and this was a good game until the middle of the third quarter, and the Mountaineers just started dominating. But I've always said here on the channel that Mack Brown is an 8-4 head coach. That's what he is. You look at his career, how many years he's coached and look at how many wins he's got and divide it by how many years he's coached, and he's about an 8-4 coach. That's what he is. He's Jimbo Fisher, the older version. He's going to give you 7 to 9 wins about every year. He's rarely going to give you less than 7, but he's rarely going to give you more than 9. He's a 7 to 9 win coach. But most coaches that are great coaches, if you give them an elite quarterback, that's how they become an elite coach and win a national championship. They just need a great elite quarterback. Well, Mack Brown's had 2 consecutive elite quarterbacks, and he's done nothing with it. So don't expect him to do anything next year when they couldn't do anything under Howell and May. The Holiday Bowl, USC defeats Louisville 42-28. The Texas Bowl, Oklahoma State defeated Texas A&M 31-23. The Fenway Bowl, Boston College defeated SMU 23-14. And a little tidbit on Boston College head coach Jeff Hafley, that was the 3rd time that he's had Boston College bowl eligible, but only the first bowl game he's coached in. The Pinstripe Bowl, Rutgers defeats Miami of Florida 31-24. The Pop-Tart Bowl, Kansas State defeated NC State 28-19, and it was 21-19 Kansas State with, I think, a minute 50 to go in the game, and the Wildcats scored to put the game away. A very, very, very good football game. The Alamo Bowl, Arizona scores 17 in the 4th quarter to defeat Oklahoma 38-24. The Gator Bowl, Clemson gets their first Gator Bowl win since 1989 by defeating Kentucky 38-35. The Sun Bowl was all Fighting Irish. They defeat Oregon State 40-8. And in that Gator Bowl, going to the 4th quarter, it was Kentucky 21, Clemson 10. In the 4th quarter, Clemson scores 28, Kentucky scores 14. But Clemson's 28 was not 4 touchdowns. It was 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals because they went for 2 on 2 touchdowns. So they score 28. Kentucky scores 14. And there was a combined 5 turnovers in the 4th quarter. So the game was a dud pretty much until the 4th quarter. But I believe the Gator Bowl is the 4th longest bowl game. It's been around forever. The Liberty Bowl, Memphis defeats Iowa State 36-26. The Peach Bowl, Ole Miss defeats Penn State 38-25. You knew going in that was going to be a good, hard-fought bowl game because, you know, the old adage with Penn State coach James Franklin is he's a great recruiter, but he can't win the big game. So Ole Miss, being a borderline top 10 team, he wants to prove he can beat top 10 teams. And then Ole Miss was going for their first 11-win season in the history of their program. So you knew that was going to be 2 teams that fought hard, and that was a very competitive football game. Ole Miss pretty much second half dominated, but the first half was back and forth. The Cotton Bowl, Missouri defeats Ohio State 14-3. The Music City Bowl, Maryland dominates Auburn 31-13. I can't figure out why Hugh Freeze coaches so good against Alabama, but he's terrible against everybody else. Makes 0 sense to me. The Arizona Bowl, Toledo was up 15-6 going to the fourth quarter, and they let the Wyoming Cowboys score 10 in the fourth to win the game, 16-15. And the Orange Bowl is dominated by Georgia, 63-3. I heard on Thursday that it was, at the time, on Thursday, Georgia picked to win by 21, and my thought was, that's not enough. That game's not going to be close, and it wasn't. And take that game away if you still think Florida State deserves to be in the playoffs. You're crazy. I want to give you a few quick scores to remind you what I'm always saying here on the channel, that college football is now a game of offense. And you can just look. I mentioned here on the channel that Boston College a few years back had the number one defense in America, and they went 6-6. Just this year, Clemson was top 10 in America in defense. What'd they do? They had an average season. Iowa, we know by now, Iowa is, if not number one, they're top 5 every single year in college football in defense. And what have they won? Nothing. Why? Because their offense sucks. It does not matter how good your defense is. If you can't score, you're not winning, especially against the elite teams. Now, you ain't got to score 35, 40 points every week. But when you play the likes of Ohio State, Michigan, Washington, Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, LSU, all the top 10 teams, if you go in there and you think 21's going to win this game, you're crazy. It's not. But since the college football playoffs have started, every single year, the team that has won the national championship has scored at least 30 points every year except for one. In 2015, which was the very first college football playoff national championship, Ohio State scored 42. In 2016, Bama scored 45. In 2017, Clemson scored 35. 2018 is the only year the winning team didn't score 30. In 2018, Bama scored 26. In 2019, Clemson scored 44. In 2020, LSU scored 42. In 2021, Bama scored 52. And 2022, Georgia scored 33. Now, of course, last year, Georgia scored 65. They didn't have to, but you got to remember, in the first round playoff game, they had to put up 42 to beat Ohio State. So they didn't need 65 to win the national title, but they needed 40 plus to get there. But you go back in the day just a few short years ago, and in 1993, Florida State won it all. They scored 18 points. 2003, LSU scored 21 points. In 97, Michigan scored 21. In 98, Tennessee scored 23. And in 2000, Oklahoma won it all by scoring 13 points. Now, if you watched Florida State play against Florida or Louisville, and you think that team was going to score 30 plus points, you're absolutely out of your mind. It ain't happening. And I gave you those scores just to show you how the game has changed so much. And whoever wins it all this year, which I think will be Texas, but whoever wins it all this year, if they don't score 30 plus points in the national championship game, they won't win. They will need 30 points, either in the first round or the championship game, or both, to win it all. The days of teams winning it all 17-14 are over with. That's not happening. But why do we as college football fans want more college football, and then when we get it, we complain about it? And what I mean by that is, you know, people that March or April, they're saying, man, I miss football. man, I'm ready for football to start. And then college football gets here, and then the bowl games come around, and we say, there's too many bowl games. Now, that's saying there's too much football, take away bowl games. But in March or April, you're saying, I want football. So what do you want? Do you want more football or do you want less football? Now, if you're the kind of miserable fan that wants less bowl games and wants to complain about wanting more football, but then when you get more football, you want less football. And if you're one of those complaining type fans that just can't be happy and you're mad at the bowl games for playing, that's fine. But don't get mad at the ones who actually want to watch the bowl games. But we know those fans that say, man, there's too many bowl games. I'm just not going to watch. And then when you talk to somebody who actually watched the bowl game, they say, why are you watching that bowl game? It's like, I want to. It's college football. It's fixing to be over with. Yeah, but that game was pointless, man. I was fussing at a coworker this past week who is a Miami Hurricane fan. And I asked him on Thursday, I said, don't your team play today? And he said, yeah, but it doesn't matter. It's a pointless, stupid bowl game, and college football, they just ruin themselves by making it to where once you lose a game, your season's over with. And I said, look, if you can't watch Miami when they're bad, don't watch them when they're good. Because it's easy to be a fan of a team if they're playing for a national championship. But if they're playing in the Pinstripe Bowl and you're complaining about it, you're not a fan. If you're only going to watch your team play if they're playing in a playoff, you're not a fan. Of course you're going to be a fan when they're winning. Anybody can. But you can't tell me that the Pinstripe Bowl is a pointless bowl. It's not. Think about growing up. When you're growing up and you take your family and friends and y'all go outside and play football in the backyard at Thanksgiving or July 4th holiday or Christmas time or, whenever. When y'all go outside and split up the teams, of course, the moms and dads are going to say, oh, we're just having fun. Y'all don't worry about it. But to almost every person that's playing, you want to win. And if your team wins, you go back and tell all your coworkers and everybody you know, man, we played a fun game of football at holiday time, and my team beat my brother's team or whatever. You brag about it. So if you brag about playing in a football game in the backyard in front of 20 family members, you don't think college football players brag about, winning whatever bowl game it is in front of millions of people? Yes, they brag about it. If you brag about winning a backyard football game, they brag about winning their bowl game. But we let a few players make us think the game don't matter. Let's look at the college football rosters. There's 85 players on the roster. If the bowl game comes around and 10 players decide not to play, who cares? There's still 75 that care because they're playing. And that's more than 90%. So we're going to let about 10% of a college football team make us think we don't care. No. If the players should care, we should care. Because we can't sit here and get mad if our team has players opting out of the bowl game, but then we sit here and we say, well, it's not a playoff game, so I'm not going to watch. How can you get mad if a player doesn't care if you don't care? If your team is playing, you should be watching. I don't care if it is the lowest bowl game on the totem pole. If your team is playing, you should be watching. And if you're not, then if your team makes the playoffs, don't watch. Because Florida State had, I think, 19 players opt out. But even so, there's still 66 that cared because they went. But they were an anomaly. I think Ole Miss only had one that didn't play. Penn State had 4. And Clemson had 3 or 4. So most teams only had 4 or 5. But since Florida State had 19, if you take all the teams in the bowl game and add up the total number of players not playing, opting out, it's probably about an average of 7 or 8 per team. So if you've got 85 players and 7 or 8 don't care, you know what? That means to everybody on the team, it matters. If it matters to the players, it should matter to the fans. And if you don't care, that's fine. But if you don't care, don't get mad because a player don't care. Because more than likely you're 2 times or 3 times that player's age. So, they're young enough to where they may look back later on and say, I regret that decision. I should have played. But you're old enough to where you're probably not going to change. So if they don't care, then you can't get mad if you don't care. Now, if you care, then you can care. But you can't fuss at them for not caring, and then you turn right around and you not caring. It's the same thing. There's no difference. But I don't understand why we want more college football, and then when the bowl games come around, we say, man, there's too many games, so you want less football. So what do you want? Do you want more football, or do you want less football? I don't understand what people want. I say it all the time here on the channel that people just want to complain. They just got to find something to complain about. If we only had 10 bowl games, they would say, man, we need more bowl games. And then you get 43 bowl games, and it's, man, there's too many bowl games. Well, what do you want? Do you want more bowl games, or do you want less bowl games? You can't have it both ways. Homes for Our Troops is a publicly funded 501c nonprofit organization that builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post 9/11 veterans. Since the 2004 inception, nearly 90 cents of every dollar spent has gone directly to our program services for veterans. Visit at hfotusa.org. And let me go ahead and be the first to say, before it gets here, Happy New Year to you. I wish everybody the best of health and luck and happiness and wealth in the upcoming year. Any thoughts on any of today's topics, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. My friend Jack claims he can communicate with vegetables. Jack and the Beans talk. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.